I'll start. I'm Patty Florkowski from Human Resources. I'm the Director of Benefits.
I am Caitlin Leidy from Human Resources. I'm Senior Benefits Specialist.
I'm Hillary Kwiatek. I'm the Employee Communications Specialist in HR, and I'm just here really to listen and hear what everyone wants to know.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So we are recording, just so folks know and are aware. So we will be able to have this posted on the parental leave policy website should folks want to share this out or have any additional questions answered. Hillary did put the staff leave policy formally in the chat. For those of you who just joined, I'll go ahead and throw that as well in there. So that you're able to access it as we talk through this. So we're going to start with a little bit of framing of how this came about, sort of what the conversations were like, to provide some history. And then we're going to spend much of our time talking about questions that you all have so that we can get you those answered for you. If you have any additional questions that you did not submit in advance, you can do so via the chat function, the Q&A function. And we'll be sure to try to get to those. We did have a decent number of questions that were submitted in advance that we'll prioritize and hopefully have time at the back end to answer any additional questions that you may have. So as stuff comes up, please send them our way and I will be tracking them and we should be able to take it from there. So with that in mind, a little bit about the history of this. So this conversation began in a partnership with Human Resources about 2017, 2018. And it really started by asking the question, how can we promote some equity around family building and create a family friendlier campus than we had at the time? And so what happened from there was a lot of strategy conversations with the Pride Center, with the Faculty Council, which is a group that supports the Pride Center in the faculty world, and then also our faculty staff Pride Network. So through leadership and conversations with Patty and Chris in Human Resources, as well as Dr. Mary Foltz and Dr. Syria Lang, as well as Chelsea Gilbert, we began to do some benchmarking. We began to create some sort of interest in collecting some stories about the impact that this update may have on our Lehigh staff community. And with the pandemic, obviously things shifted and things were made much more challenging. But as soon as we were on more stable footing, we reset up the conversation, and in partnership with Human Resources and the Vice President for Finance and Administration, there was a significant appetite for this to move forward, which we're really appreciative of. And so that brought us to what we now have as the formal staff policy, which is significant and is something that we are continuing to explore how we can expand and also think more broadly about family benefits here at Lehigh. So with that in mind, I'm going to toss it over to Patty, who's going to share with us a little bit about the formal policy and some of the updates that were made as a result of this new policy.
Thanks, Scott. Yes, so effective July 1st, 2022, we now have a staff paid parental leave policy. There are eligibility requirements. If you're a staff member, you must be in a benefits eligible role and have 1 year of service as of the date of birth of the child or placement of the adopted child. So you need the 1 year of service. The paid parental leave is for up to 6 weeks leave at either 60% pay or 100% pay. So the difference between the 60% pay and 100% pay has to do with your years of service. If you have a child or adopt a child and you have 5 years of continuous benefits eligible service, you'll be paid those 6 weeks of paid leave at 100% of your salary. If you have less than 5 years, so greater than 1, less than 5, you would have be eligible and have available to you 6 weeks of paid parental leave at 60% salary. Now, it's important to note when you have that 60% salary, you will work with human resources through the whole process, but you can supplement the other 40% with available leave balances such as vacation, floating holiday. So this is an additional 6 weeks that does not take into consideration the 6 weeks or 8 weeks you may get if you're the birthing parent and you have short-term disability. The paid parental leave is to bond and care for your child. That would begin at the end of the short-term disability period. If you are the non-birthing parent, you have the 6 weeks, and that can be used at any time in the first year of the baby's, from the first birthday or from the date of adoption, the date the baby is placed. So you have those 6 weeks available. It is a continuous full-time benefit. So you would need to take those 6 weeks continuously. It has to be completed before the baby's first birthday or the 1-year anniversary of the adoption. And there is a request form that you'll need to complete and submit to Human Resources. And we'll work through all of that. That is on the website. The policy is on the website. We have a list of FAQs on the website, and we'll be adding to that probably after this session as we get more questions. And that's basically it. Unless I'm missing something, Caitlin, keep me honest here.
No, I think that was a good recap overview because we'll really dive into a lot
With
more
the questions.
detail. Yeah.
So do we want to dive into some of the questions that we received beforehand?
Absolutely. So we have quite a few questions. So we'll start with, what is the new breakdown of the salary benefits? And I should say some of these questions may have been said by Patty already, but it doesn't hurt to go over them again. Caitlin, would you like to take that question?
Definitely. So my understanding is this is referring to the salary continuation structure of the new policy. And as Patty mentioned, if you've been employed in a qualifying position for at least 1 year of service, but less than 5 years at the time of birth or adoption, then you'll receive 6 weeks of 60% pay. If you've been employed for more than 5 years at the time of birth or adoption, then you'll qualify for 100% pay continuation for those 6 weeks.
Thanks, Caitlin. We'll throw another one your way. Will taking this leave use any of our vacation/excused absence time?
Not necessarily. So Patty touched on this. If you're receiving 100% pay because you've been employed longer than 5 years and it's not dipping into your vacation or your excused absence time, this is strictly salary continuation that the benefit is offering. However, if you fall into the category where you're only receiving 60% pay during those 6 weeks of leave, then it's up to you if you'd like to supplement the other 40% with your leave balances. I do want to note that you can use accrued vacation days or floating holiday time to supplement, but only if you're also on an approved family medical leave at the same time can you use excused absence or sick hours to supplement. That is an important distinction that we can always talk to folks individually about because it's going to be basically on a case-by-case basis. But paid parental leave qualifies as family medical leave if the staff member has family medical leave available to use. And in those cases where family medical leave is designated and also running concurrently with the paid parental leave, then the staff member can use sick leave to supplement that 60% of their pay.
Very good, thank you.
I actually asked a follow-up real quick,
Yes.
Holly. Sorry, I know we're going to pass it.
Okay.
Just one point of clarification. So when you are taking staff leave, like a parental leave, and let's say in my situation, I have 5 years, so I get 100% pay, that's automatically considered 6 weeks of FMLA as well?
It is. So under federal law, under the Family Medical Leave Act, if an employee is taking leave for a qualifying FML reason, which to bond with a newly adopted child or a newborn child, that qualifies under FML. So by law, we actually have to designate that time as family medical leave.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Is this a separate leave, or are we still required to use sick or vacation time? So I think that question kind of aligns with what was just answered. So do we want to follow through with that question, or?
Yeah, I can just elaborate. It is similar to the last question. You're not required to use sick leave or your vacation days. It's completely optional, and only if you're in that category where you're receiving 60% pay instead of the 100%.
Okay.
All right, Patty, we're going to toss this one to you. Will leave affect any benefits, in particular health insurance?
No. So if you're on, excuse me, an approved short-term disability leave, if you're the birthing parent, or even if you're just on the paid parental leave, it's a paid leave, and your employee benefits would continue the same as if you were an active working day. So no, it would not affect, it wouldn't terminate any of your benefits as long as you are on this paid leave. And it's also important to note that if you are covering yourself under our health insurance and you do have a baby or bring a baby into your home through adoption, make sure you remember the 31-day QLE rule if you need to add that child to your healthcare coverage. But no, there's no interruption of your employee benefits during this leave.
So the QLE for insurance purposes, that is a 30-day period after adoption or birth where you would be able to add them to your health insurance.
Yes, 31 days from the date of birth or placement of adoption, finalization of adoption.
I have a question to follow that. Are you eligible for this parent leave benefit if you are not covered by Lehigh's insurance?
Yes, the eligibility is based on your job, your FTE, and your years of service.
Okay.
So if you're benefits eligible, regardless of whether you purchase medical insurance or dental insurance, if you're within a benefits eligible position and you have the years of service, you are eligible for this benefit.
Okay, thank you. Patty, another question for you.
Okay.
How is this different from short-term disability?
Short-term disability is a period of time when employees are under medical certification that they are unable to work. The birth of a child constitutes a medical disability for the birth parent. So short-term disability covers you for the period that the doctor certifies you are unable to work. The paid parental leave is to care for and bond with the baby. So once short-term disability is done, once the doctor verifies or confirms with Lincoln Financial Group that you are no longer disabled from your position, paid parental leave would be the next step to bond with the baby.
Thank you.
So that actually leads well into the next question, Patty. Can you, and I think you've mentioned this already, but can you then take short-term disability and this new benefit following if you are the birth parent?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we would require you to start a claim with Lincoln Financial Group for the short-term disability period. And as soon as the short-term disability period is done, which generally is 6 weeks, can be extended for medical circumstances to 8 weeks. But as soon as the doctor releases you to return to work, you can start the paid parental leave immediately following.
Okay. As a birthing parent, can someone use 6 weeks of short-term disability, 6 weeks unpaid FMLA, and also the 6 weeks paid leave to have a total of 18 weeks leave? Caitlin, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Caitlin does.
Bear with me because I'll do my best.
I'll help you out.
The short answer is no. So the combined maximum leave between short-term disability, family medical leave, and the paid parental leave is not to exceed 12 to 14 weeks, depending on how many weeks of short-term disability you're approved for. And Patty just touched on that. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a second. If an eligible staff member is taking leave for the purpose of bonding with a newborn or a newly adopted child, then the parental leave will be designated. At the same time, like I mentioned before, if your leave is qualifying leave under the Family Medical Leave Act, then FML will also be designated at that same time. So as the birthing parent, short-term disability is normally approved for either 6 or 8 weeks, depending on the type of delivery that you have. So usually 6 weeks, but if you have a C-section, then that usually requires a longer recovery period. So you'll wind up with 8 weeks being approved. Following those 6 or 8 weeks, as Patty mentioned, then you can use your 6 weeks of paid parental leave. During that entire time, short-term disability included, family medical leave will be running concurrently with that leave. So both leaves, the short-term disability and the paid parental leave, are qualifying leaves under the Family Medical Leave Act. So we would designate that time as FML, in addition to the short-term disability and paid parental leave. It can be confusing. We understand that. We're here to help you work through those situations. Unfortunately, that's just the world of benefits and legislation, especially where laws get involved. But if you have a specific case, anybody, and you're not quite sure what your options are, how to proceed, what you can do, what you can't do, just shout out to us and we'll help you through. I do want to mention before we move on to the next question that, like, all of this being said, these benefits that are offering paid leave, you can certainly request additional time off after those 12 or 14 weeks. However, anything above and beyond what is permissible under these programs, these benefits, would be at the discretion of your supervisor. So you'd also want to consider that any additional time off could also impact your salary and your benefits at that point in time. So again, those would be pretty specific circumstances. So I would encourage anyone who has questions, just please feel free to reach out to us and we can work through that.
That was a good explanation.
And that actually, again, is a nice segue into our next question, Katie, for you. You mentioned about the need for supervisor approval if it's above and beyond the potential 12 to 14 weeks for a birthing parent. In those 12 to 14 weeks or 6 weeks, if you're adopting, does a supervisor have to approve the time based on staffing needs?
No, supervisors don't have to approve that time under the paid parental leave. Staff members are encouraged to work with their supervisors to the extent possible, of course, planning for preparation of their absence. But I think we all know that babies and children and adoptions, they don't always happen exactly when we expect them to. So that's why I say, to the extent possible, try to work with your supervisor to plan in advance. But these programs are a benefit granted to staff, and in most cases with family medical leave running concurrently, and that is federal law, the supervisor does not need to approve this time.
How does parental leave cost the university money? Patty, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. Everything costs money, right? So when we got approval to move forward with this parental leave, there was a budget index that was funded by the university for this leave, for the leave purpose. And it works very similar to short-term disability and salary continuation. If you think about it, any time that you're not at work but being paid by the university, whether it's a vacation day or a sick day, there is a cost to the university. There is work that someone else is doing in your absence, and that could lead to additional costs. But there is a budget index that was created for the paid parental leave and funded by the university.
Great, thank you. So some of this conversation has been evolving around matching faculty benefits, which I know is a little bit more complicated potentially. So Patty, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe why Lehigh is not following the lead necessarily of other universities, which I just want to note, we did do significant amounts of benchmarking in this conversation. And while I'll be the first to say we didn't get everything we wanted as the proposal went forward, which I think transparency is important, we did have a lot of generous conversations with finance and administration and human resources. And there might still be some inequity. So can you maybe talk a little bit about that, Patty, and maybe the future, but also sort of why it doesn't explicitly match faculty benefits?
Sure. First of all, faculty receive no paid leave. They don't have access to vacation hours or sick hours, floating holidays. So let's think about it from the practical standpoint. We have a faculty member who has a child or welcomes a baby through adoption into their home. If they're the birth parent, they would have access to short-term disability, so 6 weeks or 8 weeks of paid short-term disability. And then if they want to bond with their baby under FML, they would then not get paid. They don't have vacation or floating holidays such as staff, so they would have to take that time as unpaid. It was a decision long ago that faculty would have paid family medical leave. Staff members have access to vacation accruals, to sick time, to floating holiday that can be used to supplement in the past, to supplement family medical leave after a short-term disability for childbirth. And now they have 6 weeks of paid parental leave. So if you're the birth parent and a staff member, you have 6 weeks of STD, short-term disability, 6 weeks of paid parental leave, 12 weeks of paid leave, and faculty have the same thing. I think this is a great step forward. I think it's a generous benefit to staff. There are other things to note, such as we did a lot of benchmarking and we weren't way off from other universities and colleges, but many states are now enacting and have legislation in review for paid parental leave or paid family leave. So I'm not sure if some of the universities have paid parental leave for everybody because of the state that they're in. I'm not sure. The question, when it says, why isn't Lehigh following the lead of other universities? I think it depends on what other universities are. It depends on the state that they're in. But I definitely think that we've taken a big step and that we're moving in the right direction. And Scott, you mentioned about possible changes coming up. We are looking at more family-friendly benefits. We're looking at expanding fertility benefits and the use of sick excused absence for staff for any approved family medical leave. So right now, the way the policy stands, if I have to use family medical leave to care for my spouse after a serious health condition, I would have to use vacation time or floating holiday. And we're going to open that up to allow the use of sick time for any approved family medical leave. That is in the works. That is not in effect right now, but we are working toward revising that policy and having it approved.
Just a follow-up along the sick time and family medical leave. Is sick time currently able to be used to supplement, let's say I'm in the 60% category, so I've been here for 2 years, I adopt a child, I get 60% of my pay. Is sick time able to be used in that scenario or no at the moment?
Today, no, because the policy hasn't been updated.
Okay.
It hasn't been revised and approved. It's in the process, so hopefully very soon.
Okay, so it would have to be though vacation and floating holidays.
Floating holiday.
Right, and I want to just clarify there too that, Scott, to that extent, if the staff member has family medical leave available to them and that leave also falls under family medical leave, then yes, the sick leave theoretically could be used to supplement. The only time that there would be a difference would be if, just for example, maybe a staff member had to use all of their family medical leave entitlement earlier in the year for an unrelated reason. You know, maybe they had a partner who was ill or another child who was ill with a serious health condition, parent, whoever it may be. And then when this adoption is finalized, they are still eligible for the paid parental leave benefit, but they don't have family medical leave. So in that case, sick leave would not be able to be used to supplement that time. It's only if family medical leave is also available and running concurrently.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was good clarification. It does get confusing after some time.
It does.
But it's nice to hear the benefits in the works. That's good to look for in the future. We do have 2 questions that came into the Q&A. I'm not sure who would like to answer this, but can the 6 weeks parental leave be taken over 2 fiscal years?
I think that, and to the example given was, let's say I give birth in June of 2023. What's this situation like there?
Yes. So just bearing in mind that the leave has to be taken continuously and within the first year before the child's first birthday or 1-year anniversary of adoption. But yes, in that scenario, if you give birth in, say, June, or you adopt in June, and then your leave extends into the next fiscal year, yes, that's fine.
So I have another follow-up to that question. I'm thinking about, the possibility that well, no, that wouldn't be possible. Sorry, I'm not going to ask my question. I just internally processed it.
The second question that came up in the Q&A is, how far in advance does the online request need to be submitted to HR? This is a good question.
30 days.
30 days.
Yeah, I think that's what's written on the form, that we request 30 days advance notice.
Okay, but say a woman happened to go into early labor before she submitted. So would she be able to submit the form after and it would
Yeah.
still be approved? Because those cases do happen.
If they do happen, we understand that. And she would be, if she's eligible, he or she would be approved. Yes, they would be approved.
Thank you.
I think similarly, if you're adopting, for most adoption processes, you get approved, then you get placed into a profile book. And it couldn't be in 4 days, it could be in,
Could be in
a
couple
2
months,
years.
right.
So basically communicating with supervisors and or HR to say, hey, we've been approved, heads up, this could be coming in a week or, 2 years to really just have that flexibility.
Great. There are no more questions in the Q&A. If anybody, our attendees, have anything to ask, you can throw them in the Q&A. We have some time.
I have like a maybe more of a how does this function question. So if you're at the 60% pay, 1 to 5 year or 1 to 4, 1 to before 5 years of service, because our vacation time is accrued by hours, I imagine you would just deduct it based on the number of hours you have in your bank of leave time, in your bank of vacation or floating holidays. Is that accurate? So that to make up that 40%, yeah, how that works, essentially it's based on hours.
Correct.
Okay. So if I am at 60% pay and I work 40 hours a week, you can imagine 40% of those 40 hours will need to be taken out of your vacation or
Out of your leave
time.
bank.
Perfect. So that I think will be helpful for folks wondering how to potentially calculate
Sure.
what they need.
And to the extent that we can, we speak with employees, staff members about that and kind of lay it out what they have in their bank to the extent possible.
We have another question. If you are not a full-time benefits eligible employee, what parental leave, if any, options are out there?
Depending on how many hours you work and if you have family medical leave eligibility, you would have 12 weeks. Depending on your leave banks, you may be able to supplement some of that 12 weeks, but family medical leave, while it's a federal act, it's an unpaid leave. So you'd have the time and the security of knowing that the job will be here for 12 weeks, but you may not have full 100% pay for that 6 weeks or 12 weeks of family medical leave.
Thank you.
Does FMLA mandate a certain percentage appointment in order to qualify for FMLA leave?
There is an hour requirement and a 12-month service requirement. 12 months and 1,000 hours or
It's
12.
yeah, the federal law is 1,250 hours
see.
per year. Our policies are 1,000 hours.
1,000. So we're actually more generous than the act and the federal act.
And then also a reminder that you are considered benefits eligible if you're 75% full-time appointment.
Correct. 75% or above.
Here's another good question. If the 6 weeks fall over a university holiday, say for New Year's, you still only get 6 weeks, or do you get 6 weeks plus those holidays, making it a few days longer?
Just the 6 weeks with the holidays included. So holidays would not extend the leave any further. That's a good question.
Mhm.
That's a good question.
For short-term disability, is there a length of time requirement for short-term disability as well? Meaning, you need to have a year of service at the institution before you can access short-term disability?
So the first 6 months of your employment, when you're in your provisional period, you don't have access to salary continuation under short-term disability. So
Okay.
you wouldn't get pay, but you could file a claim and be out. Once you pass that 6 months, then it depends on how many years of service you have as to how many weeks at 100% or how many weeks at 60%. So the longer you're here, the more 100% weeks of short-term disability you have available to you.
There are no questions at this time.
If anyone does have any further questions, please reach out to us, or like we said earlier, there are some FAQs posted on the website. I don't look like there's really anything else.
Any other questions? We'll give it maybe 60 seconds before we actually wrap up. While folks are thinking about that, I will just encourage you again to reiterate, HR is here to support and work alongside you. So please do that. And I'll just throw a plug in to ERAC and getting involved in organizations like the Faculty Staff Pride Network. Should you wish to see changes, right? Like we do have that ability to have a collective voice. So just encourage you to stay engaged, to reach out to those that are working to make our university better in our commitment to being a more family-friendly campus. And so just really encourage you to stay engaged in this conversation, because that's what has brought us here today, engagement with human resources and finance and administration. And I imagine what will continue to keep us engaged in these conversations.
Thank you for saying that.
All right.
We have a thank you for the information and thanks for the ERAC shout out.
Fabulous. And as we wrap up, thank you so much to our HR colleagues for working to spell this out as clear as we can. And again, reach out to them should you have specific circumstances that you have questions about, or some sort of interesting scenario that you need to run by them, because human resources, of course, is open to all of that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.